Good morning, and welcome to today's webinar on UBC Okanagan's Declaration of Commitments to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report. My name is Ananya, and I am the Provost and Vice President Academic at UBC's Okanagan campus. I would like to acknowledge that UBC Okanagan is situated in the unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan Nation and their peoples. I would also like to acknowledge that you are joining us today from many places near and far, and acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands. We are indeed honored to be hosting this event today to share an update on the progress we've been able to make in the first year following our public declaration of the 5 commitments to advance truth and reconciliation. It is so important that we remain accountable as we take this journey of truth and reconciliation together. Today, we are sharing the first steps in the process with the hope that there is much more to come. Before we begin, I would like to extend a special thank you to some of our guests joining us today. We are pleased to have elders and members of the Okanagan Nation with us, including Elder Eric Mitchell, who we will hear from at the close of this program. Also joining us today are counselors from the Okanagan Indian Band, Dan Wilson, Sheldon Lewis, Cindy Brewer, Alan Lewis, Valerie Chiba, and Tim Isaac. Counselor Jordan Coble from the West Bank First Nation, Councillor Stacey Coatley from Upper Nicola, Chairman Rodney Coston from Colville Confederated Tribes, and Councillors Karen Condon and Nika Somde. We have received acknowledgement from the Six Nations Chiefs Executive Council of the importance and significance of this event. However, due to their scheduling conflicts, they are unable to attend. On their behalf, they send regrets and best wishes to everyone. We are also joined today by some of our municipal and provincial elected officials. I would like to welcome Ben Stewart, MLA from Kelowna West, and from the City of Kelowna, Councillors Ryan Don and Loyal Woodridge. And finally, from UBC, I would like to acknowledge members of the Board of Governors of UBC, Leslie Cormack, our Deputy Vice Chancellor Principal, who you will hear from shortly, members of the senior administration from both UBC campuses, as well as our students, faculty, and staff. It takes everyone at all levels in all our communities working together to make progress towards fulfilling our commitments. And I'm so honored that you're all able to be with us today. To begin today's program, we would like to share a short video featuring Dr. Jeanette Armstrong and her reflections on the 2019 Declaration of Truth and Reconciliation Commitments. Following the video, Dr. Leslie Cormack, Deputy Vice Chancellor and Principal at UBC Okanagan, will provide an update on the progress we have made towards these commitments.
Reconciliation for me really starts with people coming together to talk about how do we do this, how do we work this into a system that hasn't been doing it. Let's get some action going. The declaration was really to provide a way for the university to put into action truth and reconciliation by making commitments on work that they had already been engaged in but wanted to make sure come to fruition. It was a wonderful event to have those formally recognized and signed onto by this campus here. One of the most important areas of reconciliation is for every Canadian to understand the truth, to know the truth, and to be able to reconcile the truth with what has not been there previously. For the students, all students in this institution, there's a great opportunity to make change happen in relation to a better future for all of our people.
Good morning. My name is Leslie Cormack, and I'm pleased to serve as the Deputy Vice Chancellor and Principal of UBC Okanagan campus. Thank you for joining us today as we reflect on the promises and commitments that we've made towards truth and reconciliation on the UBC Okanagan campus. The long-standing relationship between UBC and Syilx Okanagan Nation is foundational to this campus's history. In 2005, UBC established the Okanagan campus in partnership with Syilx Okanagan chiefs, and thus began our shared story as friends, neighbors, and partners. In 2019, UBC Okanagan pledged to support Indigenous students, culture, and scholarship through a public declaration of 5 commitments in response to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action. Today, we're here to reaffirm these promises and share the progress we've made thus far. I will now provide a progress report on each of the 5 commitments, and I invite you to read along by following the link in the chat. Our first commitment was to develop and deliver an Indigenous culture orientation program for all faculty and staff at UBC's Okanagan campus. I'm pleased to note several important steps we have taken in this regard. Indigenous culture orientation material has been developed and piloted with our student portfolio, with delivery to all faculty and staff currently in planning. The Office of the Vice Principal Research and Innovation also held a 2-day cultural competency training that included over 45 people from UBCO and partner organizations. Thank you to those who've embraced these opportunities to learn about the history and experiences of Indigenous people. Our second commitment was to create a senior advisor role on Indigenous affairs for the Okanagan campus. In January 2019, Ian Cull was appointed as the inaugural senior advisor to the Deputy Vice Chancellor and Principal on Indigenous affairs. On July 1st, 2020, Adrian Vadan, a member of the Syilx Okanagan Nation from the Okanagan Indian Band, was appointed senior advisor to the Deputy Vice Chancellor. I want to thank both Ian and Adrian for the wisdom and guidance they have provided to us on matters of all kinds. Our third commitment was to develop and implement activities that support the revitalization of language fluency, including through initiatives such as the Language Fluency Proficiency Degree Framework. I am pleased to announce that the Okanagan campus has approved the Bachelor of Insilukujin Language Fluency. Following ministry approval, we hope to welcome students to this program in 2021. The Insilukujin Language Fluency Program is also collaborating with the Okanagan School of Education on a pathway to language teacher education for graduates to enter into the Bachelor of Education program. Additionally, this promise includes improvements to signage and wayfinding on campus, which represents Okanagan language and culture. These improvements include welcome signs on 7 Indigenous languages of the interior on the doors of community, culture, and global studies faculty members, updated street signs featuring English and Syilx languages, with more signs in development through collaboration with the Inaukin Center. A breathtaking new art installation featuring the work of Silkana Fortier in the Commons building. These updates will help our campus to be more inclusive and welcoming to Indigenous students, as well as honor the traditional language of this land. Our fourth commitment was to advance Indigenous teaching and research through positive incentives and strategies that support faculty hires, curriculum development support, land-based learning and teaching spaces, and research. This commitment is an integral part of all planning for the future of UBC's Okanagan campus. The steps we have taken to date will have significant, far-ranging impact for years to come. This includes welcoming 6 new Indigenous faculty members who will bring a wide range of skills and experience to their respective faculties. Thank thank you to each new faculty member for making UBC Okanagan your home and providing your knowledge to future generations. Further to this, our campus will continue working towards creating faculty advisory committees to support curricular changes and Indigenous initiatives across campus. Through the hard work of our faculty and staff, UBC Okanagan offered 79 courses with Indigenous content in the 2019-20 academic year. In addition to curricular changes, part of our promise also leads us to consider opportunities for land-based learning and teaching spaces, such as an outdoor classroom and nature interpretation in the Okanagan language. In 2019, the university began working with Formline Architecture to create a concept plan for an outdoor gathering space and classroom. The draft concept design reflects both the Toole Mat House and winter home architecture of the Silks Okanagan people. This commitment also recognizes the need to explore Indigenous research opportunities and honor the important contributions of Indigenous teachings. I'm pleased to share several initiatives that will enhance Indigenous research opportunities at UBCO. UBC Okanagan is receiving a $1 million Social Science and Humanities Research Council partnership grant to establish a partnership research initiative for the next 5 years that will bring local elders and knowledge keepers together with educators and the extended community. Through this partnership, students will gain a deeper understanding of Silks culture with teachings that connect land, culture, and understandings of self in the world. The Office of the Provost and Aboriginal Programs and Services has received a Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council Promo Science Award for Aboriginal undergraduate research mentorship, which will pair Indigenous undergraduate students with faculty mentors to provide guidance and research experience. I would also like to recognize the important agreement on August 11th, 2020, as the Chilcotin Nation and UBC signed a Memorandum of Understanding and an Indigenous Knowledge Protocol Agreement. Of course, no research could take place without the dedicated individuals who work to further our knowledge. To this end, I would like to congratulate Associate Professor Ian Folds on his appointment as a Tier 1 Indigenous Reconciliation in Engineering Chair as part of the Principals Research Chairs program at UBCO, effective April 2020. This brings me to our last commitment, which was to expand health and wellness services to better support Aboriginal students. The heart of everything we do at UBC is our students. When implementing this pledge, we wanted to ensure it was done with a holistic understanding and approach to health and wellness that serves the whole student. We're excited to note several new initiatives to support the financial well-being of Aboriginal students. The Community, Culture, and Global Studies Department provided 4 $500 awards to Indigenous students majoring in Indigenous Studies in the winter of 2019 academic session. The new CIBC Aboriginal Access Studies Award will provide 5 $5,000 awards annually for students admitted to an undergraduate degree program from the Aboriginal Access Studies Program. And finally, I would like to thank the family of Mabel and Wilbur Hill, who have endowed a bursary of $3,450 for a student enrolled in the Bachelor of Arts program. In addition to increasing supports for financial well-being, UBC Okanagan welcomed a full-time Indigenous counselor in September of 2019, who will provide further health and well-being support for Indigenous students. Though we can take heart in the actions we've already taken towards fulfilling these commitments, we are still early in our journey of truth and reconciliation. Thank you to the Silks Okanagan Nation for the friendship, leadership, and support they have provided that is integral to the history and future of our campus. I would also like to recognize each of you who has helped us on this journey. It's hard work and shared sense of responsibility towards truth and reconciliation that I see on campus each day that turns our commitment into actions that will provide better support for Indigenous students and scholarship at UBC. Thank you. I am confident that through the fulfillment of these 5 commitments and the continued action on the Indigenous Strategic Plan, we can continue to build a just and equitable society. Thank you once again for joining us today and sharing in our accountability towards meaningful change on our campus. I'll now turn it back to Ananya and our panel for their insights and discussion.
Thank you, Leslie, for that update. This now brings us to the question and answer portion of our webinar. I invite all of our panelists to turn on their microphones and cameras. We will use the Zoom Q&A feature. You can ask a question at any time by clicking on the Q&A icon in the bottom of your Zoom window. You can also engage by liking other questions that you find most interesting so that they rise to the top of the question list. And while we do that, it is my honor to introduce today's panelists. With us today is Dr. Jeanette Armstrong, Canada Research Chair in Okanagan Indigenous Knowledge and Philosophy, and an Associate Professor in the Indigenous Studies Department at UBC Okanagan. Dr. Armstrong is a member of the Silks Okanagan Nation. We also have Bill Cohen, Dr. Bill Cohen with us, who joined our faculty in 2020 and is an assistant professor in the Okanagan School of Education. Dr. Cohen is from the Okanagan Nation with extensive kinship ties throughout BC and Washington. Also joining us today is Dr. Margaret McIntyre-Latta, Director and Professor of the Okanagan School of Education. Dr. Latta is a lifelong educator who has taught at all levels of education. And finally, we are incredibly pleased to be joined by Jordan Nett, a member of the Okanagan Nation from Westpac First Nation and a graduate student at UBC Okanagan. Jordan is currently working on her master's thesis on the subject of intergenerational trauma from residential schools. I will look at your Q&A questions, and we also have some questions that I will pose to the panelists as we go along. So I will start with a question which asks whether we have information emailed to our council about the funding opportunities that were just spoken of. There was a mention of 500,000 awards, and I would like to know more info if that is possible. Sure, we can certainly take care of that. And then let me ask some questions of Professor Armstrong first. I'll begin with you and then move to the other panelists. Dr. Armstrong, can you please share with us some of the background and the process of how the Okanagan campus responded to the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action? And specifically, if you can speak a little bit about the Bachelor of Nisga'a Fluency and how this program is unique, as well as the plans for the future of the program. I know that I have been privileged to be a part of this journey since I've been here, but I would love to hear from you about the background.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I really wanted to thank the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Leslie Cormack, for really covering so much of the work, and also thank you, Ananya, for all of the work and the support since you've been there. I really wanted to make sure that that recognition is there, because there has been such a tremendous, strong support within our institution that a lot of the things that were mentioned by the by Leslie was, only could happen with everyone working together to make that happen. And I think for me, that was really the most important aspect of that whole process. And so I really wanted to acknowledge some of the work in the background that was taking place. I think the previous Deputy Vice Chancellor was really uh, far reaching in her decision to create the DVC's Aboriginal Advisory Group, and that brought together from all the different disciplines, the advisory, and from Aboriginal Student Services to give sound advice. So when the TRC calls to action emerged and came out, that was really a clear message for the Aboriginal group to advise that maybe that, there should be some consultation rounds in terms of how to prioritize the work that, that we should take action on as an institution. And that was really good in that the advisory group organized and helped to organize how that consultation round would happen. And so what emerged were basically three different areas of priority. Of course, the idea of looking at language was a priority, how the language itself from the Okanagan Nation would reflect the place that the university is situated on, and the MOU with, and acknowledge the MOU with the Okanagan chiefs. The other, in terms of looking at what needs to be done within the institution, the other priority was a curricular working group to look at how the curricular packages and how the information in the packages were lacking information about Indigenous content or Indigenous thought. And so that working group was established. The language working group was established, and there was the intercultural understanding working group that was established that really was, I think, instrumental in looking at all the different levels of signage and work and facility and all of the other things that the university was involved in. I participated and helped with the language fluency working group. And so I think in relation to that part, I was really, really taken and surprised with the amount of willingness, the political will that was there to really move forward on it. And that working group included, a number of different aspects in terms of the institution itself, but mainly to look at the real issue that the Okanagan chiefs were concerned with, and that is how to support the revitalization of our Syilx Okanagan language. And that part of the working group was supported very clearly and very intently by the Office of the Provost, and of course the DVC, and within the Aboriginal Student Services. Ian Cull was really instrumental in making sure that there was a way in which we could conduct our meetings, we could conduct our research, and that we could participate and pull together the proposed works that we were going to be involved in. And Dr. Michael Evans was really instrumental in responding, to the provincial call for various institutions to put forward an application to the First Nations Education Steering Committee, a proposal to implement a framework or to develop research and develop a framework as to how public institutions could create degrees that would promote the learning and the fluency building that's required to revitalize and to reconcile the language losses that have occurred as a result of education and education policy in this country and in BC. And so that part, I think, was really an important aspect that at the time, the work that had to be done was to create the proposal and respond from UBC Okanagan. And that proposal, Dr. Evans was instrumental in setting down with the Indigenous, groups that were part of FNESC and looking at, what the background of the framework should be. One of the parts of the background of the framework was that it had to meet various other institutions, whether they were remote or whether they were urban or whether the public institutions were like ours, situated in a particular territory. And it also had to meet another area that's not very well understood, is that there are so very few fluent speakers left in our communities. So that had to be taken into consideration in terms of how that process would not only engage, acknowledge, but put back the reciprocity back into the community itself, the activity and the work, so that everything isn't centralized within the institution, but a lot of the work of revitalization that needs to happen is within the community. So that part, the work that Dr. Evans, myself, he was appointed by the DVC to work to develop a consortium proposal in which invited University of Northern British Columbia, the Nisga'a University, UVic, SFU, and Nicola Valley Institute of Technology and the Inalkin Center to sit down and create a framework. So our proposal from all the other institutions that applied was the one that was approved. And I'm really proud of that because of the work that was done within our institution with the support that was undertaken. It was approved. So this consortium of 8 public institutions sat down together to hammer out the framework in terms of the first 2 years being delivered within the community, that with speakers, fluent speakers, and the program there to develop a certificate and a diploma with an exit into the 3rd and 4th year at the public institution. So we adopted that framework here within our institution, and then the work began of going through all of the consultation rounds and all of the hoops to make our Sealction degree happen. And so, as has been mentioned, it's happened. We expect our first cohort of Sealction speakers in September this year, and we're also working within the framework to include the 4 other interior Salish languages, the Tlakatmuk language that is situated with NVIT, where our first 2 years are situated, the Shewapmuk language and the Stl'atl'imk language, the Lillooet language. Those are the 4 main ones that will slowly be moving online over the next several years in our catchment area. So that also really needs support in the future. So I wanted to end with that, and I wanted to end with also acknowledging the work that we have done, and that Margaret from the School of Education has really moved forward to try to make sure that our fluency degree, she will tell you more about that, is able to encompass the teachable subjects in the Okanagan language that then can be recognized, to move toward the Bachelor of Education degree. And the hiring process, hiring Bill Cohn, for instance, to be part of that, and the other hires within the university we are looking at this year hiring the first person in our department for the BNLF degree, and an administrative position to help coordinate with the community implementations and the community coordination with speakers. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful way to begin the implementation of this. And I know there's a lot of other work that was made that had to take place in terms of the curriculum and curriculum consultations, but we don't have a lot of time for that. And I want to turn it back over to Ananya at this time and just thank Eric and his wife for always being around to give sound advice and to lead us in the SEAL process that's there. And really to thank Adrienne Vidan and her role in making all of these things visible and apparent, and giving sound advice and always being there to help out, and your predecessor, of course, Ian Cull, who we really miss right now too. So thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Ananya.
Thank you, Jeanette. I'll get to a comment and a question from Pauline Terbasket. And the question will be for Jordan, I think. So Pauline says, firstly, a great day for ourselves educators, ourselves elders, nation members, and ourselves students, graduates like Jordan Ned. Please share what is important for you of this action taken by the UBC Okanagan TRC commitments. Jordan, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I believe that it is important, especially for Indigenous students, to be going on to grad school and to be having opportunities like this. There's so many factors to go through to be able to share your story and share your experiences. And I think for me personally, I wouldn't have been able to get to where I was without all the Indigenous professors, especially like late Dr. Greg Younging. He actually had a conversation with me and wanting me to pursue grad studies. And I don't think if it was for him pushing me or having that conversation that I would even be where I am, because I never thought that I would even consider or be accepted into grad school. So I think that it is a great day for how important it is for these TRC commitments, and to be going forward and really looking at undergrad students and really asking them their experiences and sort of where they see themselves in the future for their employment, I think is really important, because we take all these courses and we do all these assignments, but we're never approached and asked, what do you want to do for your future career? And I think as Indigenous students, if we're approached and have those opportunities, that would be great. And we would probably have a lot more Indigenous students pursuing higher education, such as grad school and even PhDs.
Mm-hmm. So thank you. Dr. Cohen, I'll go to you next. If you can talk a little bit about the curricular work that you're doing, because we're getting a lot of questions about what now, what are the next priorities. So curriculum is a huge area of important work. Anything you can say to reflect on how you're advancing that work?
Okay, White Chap, everyone. White Jordan, good to see you. I can say that I know your parents, your grandparents, and even your great grandparents. So, and also I'd like to acknowledge all of the work that Jeanette has mentioned, and that involves Margaret and Ananya and Leslie, and all of the work that has been a ongoing foundation. So for me coming in, some of what I'm about, and some of the work that I've been looking to both connect to and expand, is kind of learning from the past, being very, very active and alert in the present, and creating a better future, a more sustaining future. So I just want to kind of think of this in schooling kind of contexts, and go back to 1860 momentarily. So in 1860s, that's where schooling and settlement started in the Okanagan with the mission. So it's also a time when some notions of the vanishing race, they thought we were going to disappear, and also the forced assimilation, the residential school, reserve systems, and all of that really started coming into play. So from that era, uh, after the initial start in 1860s for Okanagan Syilx folks with Pandosy and company, that really had a lot of influence on schooling for us. We didn't have anything really till 1920 when the residential school started, but that's when schooling started in the Okanagan. There's a few examples of Okanagan kind of participation, none where we were looked on as having intelligence or smarts or knowledge, and lots of referring to us as savages and primitive and all of that kind of stuff. So that era was both displacement and a lot of racism and a lot of exclusion, a lot of intolerance, and that era was, there's lots of documentation, evidence about that. That's pretty clear. So something that about pedagogy now is that the relationship between us and the ecology or the Timhulau here changed, and more settlement. So the relationship between humans and the land here changed. Went from one that was, I would say, more appreciative and more reciprocal to one that was more exploitative, and and one more about ownership and more individualism. So I just want to when we have some of understanding of that, when schooling started for us in the 1920s, there were some day schools and people lobbying, and there's the residential school era started, and the what I've calling the school monster emerged, or the colonialism monster, that was really disconnected lots of us in the Okanagan from our language and knowledge and our laws and all of that stuff. It also disconnected everyone else who comes to know this place as home. So we're connecting in multiple ways. This school monster that's been quite destructive. And so lucky for us and all of us, in a broader sense, that we still have our language, we still have knowledge, we still have pedagogy. It's been maintained. It's been definitely been impacted in many ways, but we're continuing. And so I just want to kind of connect now into our current era. So we've got the Indigenous languages, our own language in critical state, as Jeanette mentioned. We've got some place-based projects going. We've got good people. We're shifting some of the notions from deficit and self-esteem theory to more proactive kind of notions. We're shifting from some of the racialized discourse from Indian to Aboriginal to Indigenous to more connecting to Syilx Okanagan, to Secwepemc, Intlakupmik, and Haida, and it's more of that humanizing diversity. So we're doing that through what the Bachelor of Syilx Fluency and the OSE connecting to that. We've got the Okanagan School of Education with Margaret, with our partnership developing, with the co-curricular development that she'll talk about more. And we've got, I've used the coyote and fox metaphor that I won't tell the story, but in lots of times coyote gets splattered to pieces when he tries to fly or do something silly, and fox comes along and gathers up the bits and breathes into the pile and comes back to life. So we can look at that as research. We're gathering the bits, we're having dialogue, we're breathing new understanding into life, we're ritualizing it into practice, making it part of our everyday lives. So we've got in some of the projects or work that I'm doing and part of is creating some monster transforming toolkits for students so that we be alert to these monsters that are threatening and disconnect our kids and don't they threaten the future. So we need to be able to be alert and as part of our schooling and education transform those monsters. And so to kind of wrap things up and put things to into the current is that there's this concept of sparks that ignite the fire and bring warmth and light to the group. It's from our language. It means it's a metaphor for collective wisdom or group knowledge. So when we come together, and lots of our pedagogy from Okanagan and Salish epistemologies come from that storyways, and they say that when we come together, we put our knowledge and imagination together, we learn from the past, and we can create a better future going forward. And that includes all of us. So that's what we're doing. That's what I see what we're doing with Margaret, with Jeanette, with Jordan, with all of Eric and Chris and all of the, it's a new phenomenon, dynamic that's happening. So that's that's where we're at. We can never go backwards. There's a lot of, when we look back, there's a lot of STEM, the science, technology, engineering, math has been applied to, the exploitative kind of aspect of things. And we've got this era of fires, floods, and pandemics. It's a very, very serious slap to us that we have to change the way we're doing things. So we can do it in ways that are more responsible, apply science, technology, engineering, arts, math in ways that are much more contribute to the healthy diversity of this place and also of peoples. So that's what my response.
Thank you so much. Margaret, briefly, if you can talk a little bit about the school's work and your own work that you're doing for reconciliation.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. I'm really pleased to be part of this conversation. As the director of the Okanagan School of Education, I do feel a particularly weighty responsibility to the TRC calls to action requiring educators across Canada to decolonize curriculum. So alongside my Okanagan School of Education colleagues, we are seeking pathways such as the Insultson Language Fluency program into our Bachelor of Education degree. But the ongoing task that's now foregrounded for all of us is to pursue what meaningful and sustainable decolonization actually entails. So paths into education are undoubtedly an important beginning, but these paths must be productively traversed, productively continued as we invest in what the terrain of these paths for beginning educators, for practicing educators, for faculty and staff in our program actually needs to embrace. So why it's critically important that we ensure prospective educators' awareness of the horrors and ongoing violence of generational trauma, racism, the colonial legacy present and embedded in systems and structures, continuing today to shape relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. We really also need to invest in our prospective educators encountering and engaging the TRC document that actually offers much hope. We need to mobilize hope within the School of Education. And for our school, we want the calls to really allow our educators to embody and practice what curricular decolonization entails. Often educators know the broad brushstrokes of Indigenous Canadian history since colonization, but connections to ways of knowing and being in the lands on which we live and teach are lacking. And our Okanagan School of Education program efforts to date understand that this is critical. We need local understandings to foster capacities for responding to the calls to action. I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of our panelists, and I would now like to introduce our final guest speaker, Elder Eric Mitchell, who will provide his reflections on the progress report that we had today and the panel discussion that we had today. I would also like to acknowledge his life partner, Elder Chris Marchot, who is joining us today as a witness. Elders Eric and Chris received the Honorary Doctor of Laws degrees from UBC in 2020. Elders Eric and Chris are members of the Okanagan Nation from the Okanagan Indian Band. Elder Chris is a 60s school survivor, and Elder Eric is a survivor of the residential school system. As elders in residence at the UBC Okanagan Aboriginal Center, Elders Eric and Chris make important contributions to enriching the educational experience for Indigenous students. As co-founders of the Cultural Safety Programming and adjunct professor in both the School of Nursing and the Faculty of Creative Studies, they have made tremendous contributions to the experiences of our students, faculty, and staff. We are very honored that Elder Eric has joined us today to share his reflections. Welcome, Elder Eric, and over to you.
I was saying, just thinking of how to follow all them good words. So what I had in mind was, so what comes to my mind is that, you know, in one way, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that we're here at this juncture today. 1 year ago, there was public commitments by the university to do a few things. And now here we are a year later. And with many of those things either started or accomplished or halfway done or very visible for sure. And, you know, this university right off the get, it opened the door to a new way of interacting with the Syilx people by creating that memorandum of understanding and a few other things. And, you know, I go by the students that we've met over the last 4 years, and our daughter came through this university for her Bachelor of Arts and Master's degrees. And so I think if she was back here today going through as a new student, she would say to us, I can see myself in this place. I can see myself because there's a flag of our Okanagan Nation Alliance, our tribal council flying overhead alongside of others. I can see signposts, you know, with our language written on there. I can see new hires that are part of our community, and I could hear a vision for our language in the work that Jeanette has done, and I'm very proud to hear that not only are they focusing on you know, the Nsilikshtan language from the valley here, but of our close neighbors, the Ntlakapmuk, the Shikwapmuk, and the Statlimuk. And I say that because uh, in the generation of my grandfather, uh, they spoke all those languages fluently because they lived so close together in this southern interior region we call British Columbia, that they all knew each other's language. And so when they got together at important meetings, um, they would just stand up and be who they are. They talk their language because they know the people around them understand who they are. And so in a way, we'd like to have that experience for our Aboriginal students to come to this place, to maintain who they are, to speak their language, and to be recognized and understood by all, at least in a metaphorical way. Um, the one of the things that is a common comment among the Aboriginal students we have met in our role as elders and residents is that when they decided to come to university, they looked at that catalog. You know, it's got all kinds of universities in there, but they chose this one specifically because it has a very good Aboriginal programs and services model. And so now when they come here, they can see for themselves that that footprint of the Aboriginal programs and services has expanded. You know, they have many trails that they can follow to get a higher education, and the goal of that language fluency degree, um, to me, what that does for our language and our children is that, you know, they in our community they get language when they're just small little babies. They call that language nest. Then as they get older, they go to the daycare where they get language in amongst them. And then Bill Cohen was uh, responsible for the Okanagan language immersion school on our community, so they can go from grade 1 to 7 in the language. The school district in Vernon, like many other districts, have did their best in providing language training so that they can carry on. But this one here, what you're doing here, it helps the goal of those language learners and our children from our communities to see a bright light higher than maybe they thought they could go. And so not only that language degree being a bright light higher than they thought they could go, but when they come in here, they can see themselves because of the new hires, of all of the different programs and initiatives that were talked about earlier. And they can see their elders in here. You know, in the community, we're not only from just one Okanagan Indian band, we're from the seven communities that make up the nation because we're related all up and down. And so I'm sure Jeanette has grandchildren that are looking to her and seeing the path that she's making for them, and all the other ones. And I'm really proud of to see this young Jordan here, amongst us, talking her truth and sharing with us, the good words of that that fellow you mentioned. Anyway, I just slipped my mind who he is. Um, to help you carry on and get higher learning. And so the reflection I have is, in my own journey here in this university, my wife and I, we started inside with our work in 2008. But it was kind of ironic that prior to that, I was setting up teepees for the Aboriginal Career Fair outside of the buildings here. For 10 years, I came when Lyle Mueller asked me to come put up a teepee, and I'd sit there and visit people that I know. And then next year, I'd come and set up another teepee and visit people that I know. And like Jeanette said the last time that we were in a panel, that one of the most important things in all of this, what we're doing and how come we got this far, is that this institute opened the door. So for me, literally, they opened the door so I could step in there and share what I know. And metaphorically, they have opened the door for all that has been accomplished to date. And we can only see that in the future, things are going to get better and better. Keeping in mind, though, that, I don't know if you heard that Quilqualakan knocking there. I'm not sure where that come from, but there was somebody had that knocking. To me, it was Quilqualakan, the flicker, woodpecker. He was coming there to caution us on all these good things. The flicker is in the story that I understand, it has to do with fire. And so fire one time, for me, I thought, oh, I'm going to burn this piece of grass here on the range. Everything was just right. The wind was still, everything was just right. So I lit a match. Oh boy, that all of a sudden the wind come up and that fire took off. And so we have to be careful with what we're doing here, is that there's almost not enough of our people willing and ready to come in and take the positions that are offered, or take the dreams that we want and bring into this institution. And so, like the language thing, it hasn't just happened in the last year. It's been going on for a long time, and so we need to remind ourselves to do that. In all the new initiatives, take our time and think about it, and bring in more and more hires, bring in more and more community, like that's what we are. Bring, listen to young folks like Jordan, and with all that information, we can move ahead slowly and do the best that we can for our people. So that's what I have to say for now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Elder Eric, for sharing your thoughts and your wisdom with us today. We really greatly appreciate the time, the dreams that you shared, and the caution that you shared as well. As we reach the end of our time today, I would like to take a moment to thank all of you for joining us and sharing in our commitment towards truth and reconciliation at UBC Okanagan. A recording of this webinar will be available in the coming days, and a reminder that you can find a link to the annual report in the chat room. And once again, thank you so much. There's lots more that is actually going on, but we're not yet ready to announce those. Hopefully by next time this year when we meet again for the update, there will be a lot more to report. Thank you so much.